Welcome to the Life Unfiltered channel. Today, I'm going to share the story of Susan. My name is Susan. I'm 51 years old, and this story happened when I was 7 years into my second marriage. That's right. I'm not married anymore. I was married to James, who is 56, and this was also his second marriage. He has 2 teenage kids from his first marriage, and I chose not to have children. The story I'm about to tell is something I never imagined could happen to me. It happened 2 years ago, when I was 49, and it changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. I've always known that life is full of choices, paths that appear like an unpredictable maze, where right and wrong are often defined by the moment. Some choices are like the ones I've made over the years, safe, thought out, almost automatic. Others, however, come out of nowhere like sparks, like a twist you didn't even know you were waiting for. And that's exactly what happened that day, when I turned down the aisle in the hardware store. The long aisles, filled with metal shelves and organized in a cold, almost impersonal way, had an oppressive feel that I never really liked. But I had to face it for the sake of those little household chores. I was focused on my simple, practical mission, to find a new showerhead, something that seemed trivial, routine. Then I saw him. He was crouching, organizing boxes of screws and tools, completely absorbed in the shelf. He seemed oblivious to everything around him. But suddenly, he looked up, and I realized he had noticed me. He was a young guy, maybe 20 at most, with short hair and skin still holding that freshness of early youth. His eyes were dark and curious, and when he noticed my presence, there was a moment of hesitation, a second where it seemed like he was wondering why I was looking at him. I needed help choosing a showerhead, so I approached him and asked about the model I was looking for. He stood up slowly, wiping his hands on the store uniform, and looked at me with a shy smile, mixing that youthful innocence with a hint of charm, a touch of something he probably didn't even know he had. "Of course, ma'am. My name's Ryan, and yours?" he asked, extending his hand kindly. "Nice to meet you, Ryan. I'm Susan." He smiled, hesitating slightly before correcting himself. "Of course, Susan. I'll help you out, sure." The change from ma'am to my name brought an involuntary smile to my face. It was a subtle detail, but revealing. His voice sounded curious, like he was speaking to a different kind of customer, someone who, in some way, intrigued him. I felt a spark in his gaze, a glimmer that seemed to go beyond mere professional courtesy. For a moment, something in that look held me, but I forced myself to refocus on what I needed, choosing a showerhead. After all, it could be just my imagination. I asked, almost on impulse, if the store offered installation services. He lowered his gaze, nodding with a faint smile, as if he already knew what he was going to say. "Unfortunately, no. But if you want, I could do it for you on the side." His tone had a hint of unexpected boldness, as if he were testing his own confidence. I paused, considering it. I knew accepting such an offer could be risky, but there was something about Ryan that made me hesitate in a pleasant way, as if there was a spark waiting to ignite. I ended up agreeing. I grabbed a card with my address and handed it to him, feeling his fingertips brush mine for a brief second as he took it. "How about today? Maybe around lunchtime?" I asked, trying to sound practical, but realizing there was something in my voice that came out softer than I intended. He nodded, saying he'd be there promptly, with a look that almost seemed proud of the unexpected responsibility and perhaps even the possibility of a new moment. Ryan arrived exactly on time, and when I opened the door, I noticed an undeniable energy between us, something that transcended the formality of this encounter. He greeted me with a smile full of familiarity, as if this were a ritual of ours, as if we'd known each other long before. After a while of light conversation, he mentioned the shower, the kind of installation it would need, but there was something unspoken in his words, a suggestion that we both knew this conversation was merely an excuse for something else. I let him head to the bathroom while I walked to the kitchen, as if I wanted to give space for routine, for the order of things. Still, with every passing minute, I felt the anticipation grow. like we were dancing around a line neither of us dared cross openly. After a few minutes, I heard the sound of water running in the bathroom, him testing the shower, and I went over, as if checking if everything was fine, but secretly hoping to stay close. He was slightly damp, with tiny droplets splashed from testing the shower. He looked at me, smiling with a calm boldness, and asked if I'd mind if he took off his shirt, just to avoid getting the store uniform wetter. I agreed, though I felt my heart racing with this silent permission. In a nearly rehearsed movement, he pulled his shirt over his head, revealing his young, toned torso, and somehow that gesture felt natural, as if he knew exactly the effect it had on me. That moment stretched on, tense and sweet at the same time, and then he moved closer, slowly, each step filling the space with a steady confidence, without hesitation. I wanted to keep some control, to tell myself this was just a passing moment, but he got so close that the scent of his damp skin and the warmth of his body threw me off balance. I tried to look away, to avoid letting him see my vulnerability, but his hand found mine, firm and warm, as if he knew exactly what he was doing, as if this encounter had been planned, inevitable. He leaned in a bit, his face close to mine, and I felt his warm breath, that subtle touch that left me on the verge of giving in completely. His desire seemed almost tangible, and I couldn't pull away. There was something about him that made me believe this moment, this silent surrender, was necessary. Before I could rationalize, our lips met, first in a gentle touch, a test, and then in a deeper, more intentional kiss. I realized that the decision to give in had already been made long before this moment, perhaps since the first look we exchanged. With Ryan, every touch and every word was a carefully synchronized dance, where he seemed to know my hesitations and intentions and knew exactly how to dissolve them. It wasn't just desire that connected us, but something bigger, a spark that awakened a forgotten version of myself, a Susan I didn't even know still existed. It was a moment of pure surrender, where we ceased being two ordinary people, with our own stories and boundaries, and became something much simpler and deeper, desire. The connection we shared, a secret exchanged only in the silence of our gazes, created a world of its own, where nothing but that moment seemed to matter. The touch of his fingers on my skin, the warmth of our bodies meeting, the urgency that seemed to ignite with every kiss. All of that made me feel as if I were, for the first time in years, truly awake. We made love, but Ryan had to leave because it was his lunch break. So before he left, I made a snack and coffee, and he left eating the snack to avoid being late. Ryan's visits soon became a routine. He came to my house about twice a week, always on Tuesdays and Thursdays, days carefully chosen when the housekeeper who helped me with cleaning was off, and at the same time, they coincided with the days I worked from home. As a psychologist, I did teleconsultations in my home office. My husband, James, was a director of a large company and never came home for lunch. He always ate at a restaurant near his office, so the setup was perfect. Ryan would come back on those days at lunchtime with that mischievous grin so typical of a 20-year-old, full of audacity and energy. I already knew what to expect, but still, every time, my heart would race. When I opened the door, he would enter without ceremony, close it behind him, and with a quick and decisive motion, pin me against the wall. His arms, strong and defined, as if the gym was a natural extension of his life, held me almost possessively, but at the same time, full of desire. I would surrender to that embrace with the same intensity, and then he would lift me with ease, as if I were nothing more than a piece of silk in his hands, and gently place me on his lap, carrying me to the bedroom. It was always the same scene, the same firm gesture, as if time had no effect on the intensity of each encounter. After we were together, breathing more calmly, I would follow him to the kitchen, where he would help himself to a sandwich I'd already prepared, as if he knew that would be his meal. He would eat quickly, already aware that time was short, and then he would be back to work. And so, day after day, this ritual repeated itself, a slow dance where pleasure and the need to lose ourselves in each other blended with routine. But it was all too good to be true. The danger always hides in fantasies, And ours, like all the others, didn't take long to collide with harsh reality. One day, unexpectedly, James, my husband, showed up at home during lunchtime, something that had never happened in the 7 years of our marriage. He walked in, heading straight for the office, shouting in a distracted tone, "Honey, did I leave a contract in the office?" Because he knew I was somewhere in the apartment. As James walked down the hallway toward the office, something made him stop. Right there, at the start of the hallway, he saw a pair of men's shoes that weren't his. I yelled that I was in the office, but he pushed the bedroom door open abruptly and confirmed the tragedy. He entered, furious, his eyes filled with disbelief, and found Ryan and me naked on the bed. The shock wasn't just his, but also mine and Ryan's. The sight of James there, suddenly, was a blow I wasn't prepared to face. His words came out like sharp blades. "While I'm working to support this house, you, with a kid?" He went on to curse, using various foul words. Ryan was stunned, speechless, unable to say a word. Our luck was that, after cursing a lot, James grabbed his things and left. Thankfully, there was no physical aggression, but he said that when he returned from work, he didn't want to find me in his apartment. I tried to talk, tried to explain, but deep down, I knew there was no defense. There was no explanation that could make it right. Ryan put his clothes on and sat on the bed, but I asked him to leave. He didn't want to go, worried something might happen to me, but I convinced him. Later, still shaken and crying, I packed my things and went to a hotel. I called Ryan, but he didn't answer. I called a few more times, but he blocked me, probably out of fear. I also didn't go back to the hardware store where he worked, wanting to respect his space. It had been 3 months since he had become a near-daily visitor, more than just a lover for fleeting moments. He was the pleasurable interruption in my routine, the secret that warmed my heart, but also brought a sense of transgression, as if we were defying time, defying right and wrong. Do I regret it? No, I don't regret it, because in my whole life, I had never felt such an intense passion. Every day felt like the first date. Now I live in the countryside of New York, at my mother's house. On one hand, it's good because I take care of her, as she's elderly, but I won't deny that I tried to get back with James. I waited a week for things to cool down. I called, and he said I was the biggest disappointment of his life. I tried to reconcile, but unfortunately he didn't want to, so we divorced. But I ask myself, shouldn't I have gotten involved? Shouldn't I have lived a relationship unlike anything I've ever known, since life passes so quickly? I lived well with James, but it was a lukewarm relationship. Was it wrong to live that passion with a younger guy, even knowing it wouldn't have a future? Well, this was another real-life portrait with Susan's story. Here on the channel, we bring examples and situations that might help you or make you reflect through the stories of others. Enjoy, and check out these other stories I've suggested. Oh, I left a little note in the description of this video. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on the bell to receive new real-life stories. I'll see you in the next life portrait.